Hey everybody, welcome once again, or for the first time ever. I am Jared Johnson, the Jared J. As some of you may be aware, the National Football League draft is coming very soon, April 24th through the 26th. So I'm going to talk a little bit for today's episode and a couple of others about some of the prospects coming into this draft. No, I'm not going to do a 28-hour episode where I do a deep dive into every single college player that's eligible. I've chosen a few guys, 3 players at certain positions to discuss and just kind of take a look at what their prospects for the NFL might be. So we'll start with the quarterback position. There's been a lot of talk about this is a weak quarterback class. There aren't any elite quarterbacks. Even the top 2 or 3 guys this year probably wouldn't have been first-round picks last year. And while I do agree with all of that, some of these guys are going to get drafted. And some of them likely will get drafted in the first round because there are definitely some teams that need upgrades at the quarterback position. We'll talk about that as we go along. But the first guy I'm going to discuss, 6'2", 215 pounds, from the University of Colorado, son of legendary NFL player Shedeur Sanders, who was also his college head coach, Shedeur Sanders. He did play 2 years at Jackson State under his dad, transferred with his brother Shiloh and their dad, to Colorado for the 2023 and 2024 seasons. Shedeur, for all intents and purposes, from a numbers standpoint, did have a very successful college career. He started all 4 years, 2 at Jackson State, 2 at Colorado. I won't go every single number, but I'll say this real quick. As a sophomore at Jackson State, he did throw 40 touchdown passes against only 6 interceptions with a 70.6% completion percentage. As you may have heard me say before, numbers do tell part of the story. They don't tell everything. But from a number standpoint, that's very impressive, even if it's at Jackson State, even if it's only as a sophomore. Fast forward to 2024, his senior season for the Colorado Buffaloes, 74% completion percentage, 4,134 yards, 37 touchdown passes, 10 interceptions, did take 42 sacks. Again, just going by numbers, pretty darn impressive. So why is this being called a weak quarterback class? Why are some people saying he wouldn't have been taken as high last year? My honest opinion, he could develop into a pretty good NFL quarterback. I just don't expect anything like what we've seen the past couple of years. Some people, and it may be unfair to the Shedeur Sanderses of the world, some people are going to look at what C.J. Stroud did 2 years ago, and they absolutely massacred Bryce Young for not being as good. Topic for another day, but Bryce Young's starting to look like a decent NFL quarterback now. He was placed in a horrible situation, and the Panthers did nothing to make life easy for him. Topic for another day, but if you've been following the channel, you know topic within a topic is one of my specialties. Shedeur, I don't think we're going to see anything like we saw out of one of my favorite players, Jaden Daniels, last year. I just don't think he's got that in him. And that's okay, because very few quarterbacks do. That's why C.J. Stroud was considered to have an elite rookie season. That's why Jaden Daniels is being talked about as having the best rookie season in NFL history for a quarterback. I don't think we're going to see that with Shedeur Sanders. I do think if he lands in the right situation, gets the right opportunity, he could develop into a decent quarterback. Because, believe it or not, being the son of Shedeur Sanders, athleticism is not his strong point. I don't mean what I'm about to say to be an insult to Shedeur. I got nothing personal against the young man. But when I heard that Shedeur Sanders, one of the fastest players in NFL history, had a son that was a quarterback, I was basically expecting Michael Vick. Watching Shedeur play, he is not Michael Vick. They are very, very different players. And I don't, just genetically and being coached by a guy that I expected would push him to run fast, I was just expecting that type of quarterback. It's okay. That's not who he is. But the efficiency is there. The decision-making is there, usually. He does sometimes hold on to the ball too long. He does sometimes take too many sacks. NFL defenses are much advanced. You got some very fast pass rushers coming at him. That's probably going to be an adjustment. Then again, he'll be playing behind an NFL offensive line. Athleticism aside, he moves around pretty good in the pocket. He's just not a rushing threat. So it's not like he's a clumsy, immobile oaf. He just doesn't have the Jaden Daniels, Michael Vick, Lamar Jackson athleticism. Moves around pretty good in the pocket. Just not a big threat to run. I don't know if he's going to be great week one as a rookie. Because there's so many teams that need a quarterback, I think Shedeur might get drafted pretty high. He might get drafted by a team that throws him in to start right away. I just don't know if that's going to be the best idea. But I'll circle back around that because these other two prospects I'm going to talk about fall into that same category. A lot of people have Shedeur Sanders as their top-ranked quarterback in this class. A lot of people have this next guy as their top-ranked quarterback, 6'2", 223 pounds, from the University of Miami, Cameron Ward. He played at 3 different colleges in his career. He played for Incarnate Word for 2020-2021, Washington State 2022-2023, then Miami 2024. He had pretty good numbers anywhere that he went. His second year with Incarnate Word, 4,648 yards, 47 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. I get that the competition level may not have been the greatest, but those are very good numbers. This past season with Miami, better competition, 67.2% completion percentage, 4,313 yards, 39 touchdowns, only 7 interceptions. Pretty darn good numbers. He's more athletic than Shedeur. He does move around better. He's a little more of a rushing threat. I'm going to keep saying this because I just want to. He's not Jaden Daniels. Hello, Jaden Daniels. Come on the show soon. Want to have you on and talk about how nobody else is you. But Cameron Ward's a pretty good quarterback. I think, personally, if it were me, I would take him. If I had a pick in the draft and I needed a quarterback that's going to draft somebody, I would take Cameron Ward over Shedeur Sanders. I just think he's got a little bit better overall athletic tools. You could argue that Shedeur was coached really well because he had this, had the same coach. Had his dad coaching him for 4 years, where Cameron Ward bounced around these other teams. So you could argue that Shedeur is more NFL ready. Difficult to say. Time will tell. Of the two, I would probably take Cameron Ward first. But even that being said, is he ready to come in and start right away for an NFL team? I don't know. Could both these guys surprise me and have really good rookie years? Yeah. If they do, hey, man, congratulations. You earned it. You earned it. I don't know how that's going to turn out. And then I'm going to go with this next guy, and then I'll circle around to kind of my overall feelings with this year's quarterback class. The next guy I'm going to talk about is not the consensus quarterback number 3. He's in the conversation. There's some other guys you could put there. But the one I've chosen to talk about is Jalen Milroe, 6'2", 225 pounds from the University of Alabama. He did start for 2 seasons. He played behind the aforementioned Bryce Young his first 2 years. Milroe, as a sophomore, actually, 2023. He was a junior this year. He could have come back for another year. As a sophomore, 2,834 yards passing, 23 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions. He took 44 sacks. He did have 531 yards rushing and 12 touchdowns. So that's the biggest thing that separates him. He does have that. He does have the athleticism. I'm not going to quite put him on the Jaden Daniels level, but Milroe is a very good runner. He's 6'2", 225. He's physical. He's got speed. He's got that upside for sure. This past season, he had 64.3% completion percentage, 2,844 yards, almost identical to the year before, 16 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. He did only take 23 sacks, which was an improvement. But the 16 touchdown passes against 11 interceptions, that's a big concern. No way to hide that, no way to disguise it. If you say it doesn't concern you, I'm going to ask you to repeat yourself. That's a big concern. Now, his rushing yardage from this past year, 726 yards, 20 rushing touchdowns. I get that he's not a running back. Some of you are listening saying, who cares? Put him at running back if all he can do is run the ball. I hear you. In today's game, you do have a lot more running quarterbacks. You got Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Justin Fields. You got that aspect is being incorporated by a lot more teams. So I do think Milroe could develop into a very good NFL quarterback. I like this guy. I'm curious to see what happens with him in the NFL. I am by no means saying he's the best of this group, but I'm curious to see what happens because the athleticism, the speed, the running ability, if you've been following the channel, you know that's the type of quarterbacks I really do like the most, and I'm just curious to see what happens with him. I personally feel like he really would benefit from playing behind another quarterback probably for a full season. And I don't mean that as an insult. I'll cycle back around to my overall thoughts on that in a moment. But I think that would be good for Milroe. I could see him in the right situation developing into a Justin Fields type quarterback. Some of you may be hearing that and you may be laughing because you think Justin Fields hadn't been that good. That's okay. There's differing opinions. I actually think Justin Fields is pretty good. I don't think we've seen him at his peak yet. So I think Milroe could be on Justin Fields' level. I don't think we've seen Justin Fields' full potential yet. I want to see him start for a full season in a good situation and see what happens. Hopefully we'll see that this year, whether it's in Pittsburgh or somewhere else. But I will also admit, as much as I like Milroe, I could see him going that route. I got to be honest and say he could also be more like Anthony Richardson. I just don't know. Topic for another day, perhaps. Is there still a chance? Is there a small silver lining somewhere that Anthony Richardson turns things around and becomes a good NFL quarterback? I'll say there's a chance. I don't know how likely that is. I don't know how confident Indianapolis even is in him as their quarterback at this point. The turnovers and all that concern me some, but what concerns me more is when you're an NFL starting quarterback and you know your team needs you and you decide that you're tired and need to come out of the game. Jalen Milroe, avoid that and you're going to be in a little bit better situation. So, not to attack Anthony Richardson. I do like him. I was very disappointed in him taking that angle this past year. Maybe he does turn things around. So we'll see how all three of these guys turn out in the NFL. I just don't know if any of them are going to necessarily be ready to start right away. But when I'm looking at the NFL draft order, Tennessee Titans have the number 1 pick. Cleveland Browns have the number 2 pick. New York Giants have the number 3 pick. All of those teams are going to be looking at upgrading their quarterbacks. Okay? So just stay with me on this. Y'all can all disagree with me. Let me know in the comments. I really want to know more what people think. Those three teams, and I would say at minimum, also the Las Vegas Raiders who pick at number 6 and the New York Jets who pick at number 7. All 5 of those teams are probably looking for a new quarterback. So let's look at the free agents that are available this year. Sam Darnold, Minnesota could re-sign him, but then they might trade McCarthy, so one of those guys is going to be available. They'll probably let Darnold go in free agency. I'm not saying I think that's best, but they did, they invested a lot of draft capital in McCarthy last year. If he's healthy, that's probably the route they're going to go. So Darnold's probably going to be a free agent. Justin Fields and Russell Wilson are both free agents. Now, Pittsburgh either re-signs one of them or they let them both walk, and now you've got another team that needs a quarterback. So there's enough teams that need quarterbacks. Sanders and Ward likely will be drafted to be starters. Jalen Milroe and Jackson Start. You just got a new nickname, Jackson Dart. If you start right away, maybe we'll call you Jackson Start. All four of those guys could end up starting as rookies. I think it'd be smarter, and you saw a little bit of this with New England last year, so I'm going to applaud them. They brought in Jacoby Brissett. They spent a third overall first-round pick on Drake May, but they eased the young man in. They didn't say, go out and win week one for us. They brought in a guy who could get them through a certain part of the season. When Drake May was ready, or when they felt like he was more ready, then they threw him in. He didn't dominate, but in my opinion, we saw enough out of Drake May last year to say he might be a pretty good quarterback. If I were any of these teams, and again, y'all can all disagree with me, if I were the Titans, the Browns, the Giants, Raiders, Jets, I'm not saying I wouldn't draft Cameron Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Jalen Milroe, but I would probably try very much to sign Justin Fields, to sign Sam Darnold. I also think probably one of these teams should do a trade with Atlanta to try to get Kirk Cousins. I'm a big fan of Kirk Cousins, but that being aside, I think he's good enough to still start for one of these teams that needs a quarterback. Near the end of last year, he didn't look the same. That's why Penix is now starting, and that's fine. I think Penix earned that. Kirk wasn't playing well near the end of last year. Now he's older, but he's also more than a year recovered from his surgery. He also reportedly was battling a sore shoulder from week 10 on, a shoulder that he took a hard hit in his throwing arm last year. That could explain why he wasn't getting a lot of the velocity on his passes that we've been accustomed to seeing over the years. If he recovers from all that, he might be more back to his old self this year. Is that a guarantee? Is that a prediction? No, because I just don't know. But if it were me, rather than go into week one with one of these rookies, I would try to sign Justin Fields, Sam Darnold, do a trade for Kirk Cousins. And this is going to sound real crazy. You might even see some teams put a guy like Gardner Minshew or Drew Lock, who have started some games and can win you some games, do kind of what New England did with Jacoby Brissett last year. You might see some of these teams do that. If somebody drafts Jackson Dart, they may say, you're our quarterback of the future. We're going to send a late-round pick to the Raiders and bring Gardner Minshew over, and you're going to play behind him at least for half a year. I honestly think that's a smart way to go. Talmadge and I talked about this on another episode. The level of patience and the absolute absence of patience in today's NFL is concerning and actually pretty irritating and illogical with head coaches and with quarterbacks. If you don't blow people away in your first year, they're talking about the fact that you don't need to be with the team anymore. And I just don't understand that. If you look historically, and I'm not going to do a tremendous deep dive, but I will say there's a lot of quarterbacks who went on to have great careers that barely did anything as rookies. Tom Brady did not start until part of the way through his second season. If not for an injury to Drew Bledsoe, we don't know when he would have started. This is going to sound crazy. He may never have started. We don't know. Bledsoe got injured. Now we see what Brady can do. It wasn't until part of the way through his second year. Joe Montana did not become the 49ers starter until, I think, halfway through his second season. Kurt Warner, if you don't know his story, look into it. He didn't even get into the NFL until he was like 26 years old. Only attempted 11 passes as a rookie. What did he do the next year when he finally got to start? He won MVP of the Super Bowl with the Rams. Steve Young started early with Tampa Bay. He didn't have a lot of success. Then he sat for 6 years behind Joe Montana before becoming a superstar. Peyton Manning actually started as a rookie, showed a lot of promise, but he also led the league by throwing, I think, 22 interceptions. Brett Favre barely played as a rookie. There's a lot of guys that have gone on to have really good careers in the NFL who did almost nothing as rookies. That's why I'm saying it really is okay to be patient and give these guys some time to adjust. All of them are adjusting to new teams, new cities, higher level of competition, new coaching staff, and I think that's honestly one of the biggest adjustments for Shedeur. I talked about not having the rushing upside. The young man for the past 4 years has had a head coach that he also goes home and calls dad. That's changing this year. Unless one of these teams wants to also hire Deion as their head coach, which Deion would probably love. Unless they want to do that too, Shedeur is now going to have a quarterback coach, an offensive coordinator, and head coach, none of whom he's biologically related to. I think that might be the biggest adjustment for him. I'm not saying anything against Deion's coaching. I'm not saying he didn't coach Shedeur well. I'm not saying he didn't prepare him well. There's a massive difference when your head coach is also your dad, and now you have a head coach who is not. That's a huge adjustment. I don't know how he's going to handle that. So my opinion, it would be smart to bring a Justin Fields. First of all, I think Justin Fields is really good. Justin Fields, Sam Darnold, trade for a Kirk Cousins. Don't even be scared to let Gardner Minshew start. He's not a bad quarterback. I just think most of these guys on this list need a little time. So if Cameron Ward needs to play behind Kirk Cousins for a year, what's wrong with that? If Shedeur Sanders needs to play behind Russell Wilson for a year, I would celebrate that. If Jalen Milroe plays behind Justin Fields, they're similar type of quarterbacks, that might be a good match. If Jackson Stark needs to play behind Gardner Minshew for a year, I could go on and on. To me, that's a smart way to go. Rather than draft somebody, throw them in right away, and then spend half a year talking about how worthless they are because you didn't set them up for success. My opinion, be patient with these guys. I think all three of them, and I did mention Jackson Dart, so I'll throw his name in again. I think all four of those guys probably, probably is too strong, very likely could end up being pretty good starting quarterbacks in the NFL. I just don't know that we should expect that to happen year one, week one. I don't think there's a C.J. Stroud in this draft class. I don't think there's a Jaden Daniels in this draft class. I don't think we'll see one of these guys do what Bo Nix did last year. Could I be wrong? Indubitably. And we'll all find out soon enough. So there's my analysis on the top quarterbacks. Please keep continuing to follow the channel if you want to hear some more talk about some running backs and some tight ends. If you did like the video, please show that by clicking the like button. And if you've not already done so, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. It really will enable me to continue to bring you more of this type of content, as well as many other kinds. So I hope y'all have a great week, and I hope I see you again real soon.